I think there's an opportunity to create a lot of products related to privacy as people wake up and realize that the dystopian future of tech overlords is already here, and it's time to resist.
Facebook kept encouraging us to go to these broader, wider audiences and letting the algorithm do the work for us, and that's just not really working anymore.
When China's locking down entire cities, if your manufacturing plant or manufacturing company is there, they get locked down.
Hey, Austin.
Hey, Lily.
How are you doing?
Good. I'm excited to chat today. Yeah. We got a good episode, and you sent me some of your questions over for the episode, and I was like, it got me going, got me thinking about the future.
Yes, this episode is going to be all about what Austin's excited about, and talk about some opportunities and get some good ideas going. So I guess to start, what have you been working on this week? What's your week looked like so far?
So I will share one of the things that's been good about this week. I have been on a news fast. A news fast for the last, I guess it's been about 8 days. What that means is that I blocked all social media. I blocked all blogs. And it has been so liberating, unbelievably liberating. And I had a realization. I was like, okay, there's so much. I was just kind of feeling a little bit negative about the future because there's a lot of negative stories that were coming up. And I was like, I'm just going to take a little break here and then reset whenever I feel back to normal. I was actually inspired by Charles Eisenstein, who posted something about taking a news fast. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to do that. So I stuck some little Post-it notes on a wall, and with 1 to 7 every day, I just would move one to the next. And so that's what's been going on for me. I highly recommend it.
It's a nice thing to do at the beginning of the year. I have deleted Instagram off my phone. I did that over Christmas, and I didn't put it back on. And then this morning I put it back on, and as soon as I opened it, I was like, oh, no, I'm going to delete this again. Yeah. I need a little break. So
I think it's the habits, just all it is, for me, it's just breaking the little habits of going into something, into a loop. And after I do that for even 7 or 15 days or whatever, couple weeks, I don't go back to the same habits. Yeah. And for me, it's usually Twitter or something like that.
Yeah, and you have more time to do fun things that actually you enjoy versus the endless scrolling. So cool. Well, talking about kind of news and feeling down and trying to get yourself a little bit more motivated and excited. My first question for you today is, what are you most excited about? We're about to go into the second month of, or I guess when this comes out, it will be the second month of 2022. So what are some of the things that you're excited about, either in the e-commerce space or just anything of interest that you think is going to come up this year? So, I think the biggest thing that I've been thinking about that's kind of on a larger scale is this transition that we're going to have, the American global down, what's the best way to describe it? American empire to the next step of whatever that looks like. And one of the things that's been really interesting recently has been kind of looking at all of the global kind of turmoil through the lens of a dying or failing empire. And that's been really interesting to look at what's happening in a larger historical scale. And I don't know if anyone's read Ray Dalio, but he's got a new book out talking about principles of changing world order. And I've been reading through that. It's been very interesting to see a lot of what's happening at a much larger scale. And nothing out of that is either good nor bad. It's just a natural progression of history. And what's been interesting is looking at what's going to happen now, what's going to happen because of this natural progression in the cycles, in the historical cycles that happen and come up. And what will it look like when, example, the dollar is not the global reserve currency anymore? How does that impact society? So that's something I've been really interested in recently. And it's not totally related to e-commerce, but in a way it's entirely related to business because we are the downstream effects of that impact everyone. Yeah, I think we've started to see some of that in e-commerce, just kind of the rocks that have come come through this year at the highest level, shipping and fulfillment. I think everybody kind of saw some of that, and there'll be more to come from that. All right. Well, so bringing it down kind of into the e-commerce space,
Yeah.
what do you think? What are 2 to 3 opportunities that you think will come up or be available to e-com brands this year?
Okay, so big things that I'm excited about this year is partnering with influencers to create or grow a brand. One thing that happened this last year, and that I think is going to continue to happen, is the continued challenge to run like profitable Facebook ads. Monetizing an already active community is a really, really big opportunity. And I think that is the biggest, that's I think the biggest opportunity for brands, whether you're starting from scratch or you're established and you can bring in somebody's already engaged audience. I look at like on a bigger scale, like what's happening with, so like the Paul brothers and their fights that they're hosting. They're doing pay-per-views for like $50 million, right? And the only reason they're able to do that is because they have this insane audience. And all they're doing is the fighting is just a way to monetize it. And so it's interesting to see that play out at that scale. And if you can transfer that to products, it's like, how do you monetize and find these people who are really, really good at getting attention, but they might not be that good at running a business? And if you can connect the two things, I think that's a really interesting opportunity for this year, and is just going to continue to grow and continue to expand. I read that, I saw that The Rock sold 600,000 bottles of his tequila in like within the first year. That is a wild, wild number for a company that just came out of nowhere, and they're selling almost 2,000 a day, 2,000 a day, right? Am I completely off with my math? No,
I think you're.
That's right. 2,000 a day from
Yeah.
launch. That is crazy. That's crazy. I think the product's like $80 or $100. So
Yeah, that's insane. I mean, the influencers can work at small scale too. I think before we jumped on this call, I was sharing a story of I downloaded a free dog training class that was sponsored by a pet company. And now I've been getting their emails, and they're putting out really interesting, good, free content through this trainer that I've just found on YouTube. So I think that, there's a huge opportunity. And I think audience is going to be a really interesting conversation that we have in 2022, just as we lose access to data, through Google and Facebook. What are the ways that brands can really own their audiences and engage with them directly? I think like loyalty programs too are going to be a bigger opportunity this year as well.
So did they partner with this influencer then, and they had this influencer create the content and then promote it as well?
Yep. Yeah. So he had a YouTube channel and a book that he had written, so it benefited him as well. And he put out this free, it was like a 8-week training, and you put your email in and it emails you the videos. And then I think the name of the brand is Pupford. And so then once you kind of go through that content, they continue to send emails, but their strategy is really, really smart, because I've opened almost every single email because they're putting in, things about diet and things about training, and then following up, selling their treats and their training tools and toys and things like that. So it's
super
very,
smart.
very smart.
Super smart.
Cool. All right. Well, before we move on into challenges, just one.
I have some more.
You want some more? Keep going.
You had me put
Keep
together
going.
some. So 2 others. So TikTok is going to continue. This is no brainer, but TikTok is going to continue to expand. And I think there's a ton of opportunity. And like, as somebody who's been doing this for a while and watching ad platforms develop, right? Like, they develop over time. So you will get rewarded early on with cheap CPAs and CPMs. That's going to develop over time, and it's interesting. It's like, if you were to pick one platform right now for this year, I feel like TikTok is going to be one just to continue to invest in, regardless of what you're doing. We're going to figure out how to advertise on it really well. The other one is, I think, privacy is going to be continued to be important and continue to be a theme for the year, and it'll limit data that people are able to gather about their consumers. And I think consumers will become more and more interested in protecting their own data as they realize like you are the product of Google and Facebook and all these different things. So leaning into that. And then also, I think there's an opportunity to create a lot of products related to privacy as people wake up and realize that the dystopian future of tech overlords is already here, and it's time to like resist that.
Yeah, that's interesting. You put privacy as an opportunity. I think like that it will be one of the things that, you know, some brands won't make it if they can't rely or figure out how to get creative in that space, and the game's changed, so it's time to evolve with it. So cool. Any advice on so influencers, privacy, and TikTok? Those are your 3 big opportunities for 2022.
Yeah, I mean, those are the things that I came up with. Do you have anything else besides that you came up with?
I think, I mean, to me, I kind of mentioned it, but I think in vein with the idea of influencers, I think that there's a big opportunity for loyalty programs this year. I think, you know, we've seen a lot of brands have success with subscription models, but I think that even just like if you don't have a repeat purchase type product, if you can build out a really exciting loyalty program, and I mean something that's really going to engage people more than just like points, I think like that's not super exciting or relevant for people. But if you can do something where they're really getting value and engaging with your brand, they're going to become more loyal over time if they feel like they're getting first access to things. Or even like if you're pushing out, you know, if you do a lot of content, maybe they're able to access content that not everyone else can access. It's just, I think that's just a way to build communication with your customers. And I think that's going to be a big thread of this year, just seeing like brands really do need customers to come directly to them as much as possible versus going through Facebook or Google right now.
One interesting thing someone shared in one of our members shared was they were experimenting with 1 hour flash sales, which I thought was super interesting, via SMS. So it's like they have limited drops, or they'll put products on sale for a limited time. Text, you have 1 hour. And that's very interesting to start training people that when they open up their text message from you, it's probably going to be something good.
Yeah, I think SMS was an opportunity last year. I think a lot of brands are on there, and consumers are going to be more careful giving out their phone number now. So if you are using it as a strategy, things like that, where you're really giving people value if they have their phone number in there, and not just like sending out every single email as an SMS. Yes. That's not going to work this year, I don't think. All right, well, moving down, what do you think 2 or 3 big challenges or hurdles are going to be for eComm brands and owners this year?
I will kick it off with continued supply chain challenges. Now, the thing that I am most concerned about is the ongoing zero COVID policy in China. So they seem to be doubling and tripling down on a zero COVID policy in China, even though we are now in Omicron time, and it's very clear that this is a much more transmissible, less deadly disease. And I think that they're going to really, really struggle to maintain that over the next year. And they're already like locking down entire cities. And what happens when that, you know, like when China's locking down entire cities, if your manufacturing plant or manufacturing company is there, they get locked down, which is going to lead to a lot of issues with supply chain. It's going to be unreliable, especially as this thing sweeps across their country. We're taking on political risk from their decisions that they're making, and I see that being continued problem over this upcoming year, and I think that we're not through it. And if you Ryan, I think it's Peterson, the CEO of Flexport, also has been interviewed multiple times, and he doesn't think that this is going to be solved this year. Yeah,
that's one that we're probably all aware of, but nobody wants to continue to hear about. But I think planning ahead is what it's going to be better for the business overall. Now's the opportunity to kind of force us into that. All right, what else you got for us?
My next one is paid social. is going to continue to be challenging this year. If you listen to what's coming out of Facebook, they're going to solve some of the reporting issues, but I do think that this increased focus on privacy is going to lead to less ads that perform less well and are more expensive. I mean, just you spend a good amount of time in Facebook. What do you see for this year? Like how has it changed? How different is it? And what do you see in there?
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree. I think ad costs are it's just going to be expensive, and it's no longer going to be a platform that's viable for small brands to come in and drive a lot of cheap traffic. Like Facebook just isn't going to be that space anymore.
Unless you have a very high average order value product.
Yeah.
And high margin.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you're still going to have to hit it just right. Because I think like just audience performance is so unknown. And I think like those of us that were marketing a lot the last couple of years, like Facebook kept encouraging us to go to these broader, wider audiences and letting the algorithm do the work for us. And that's just not really working anymore. And so it's a totally different strategy. I think it's just going to continue to be a challenge. That said, I do think, as you pointed out earlier, opportunities like TikTok could be spaces. I think there's also opportunity on YouTube as well, potentially. But yeah, I think Facebook is, even if they fix the reporting, I do think that they will, and they will figure out a way to continue to get brands to spend money on the platform, certainly. But I don't think it's never going to be what it was.
And one upside of that is that I think there were a lot of brands that were like completely unsustainable built on Facebook. Now, the upside is that they were generating a lot of cash, but the downside is I've had clients that built a large infrastructure to support growth that came from Facebook, and then the algorithm changed and they literally had to lay off everybody.
Yeah.
And so that's the ups and the downs of building a business super incredibly fast on paid social. But yeah, those are my challenges for this year.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say privacy and fulfillment. So I'm aligned. I think most of us are feeling those challenges, but I think that they can also be turned around. And there will definitely be winners and people that figure it out. And I think being just creative and smart and engaging with your customers, really valuing your customers, those brands will make it out of this. All right, so kind of speaking from the brand space, are there any e-commerce stores or brands that you are watching right now, either that are up and coming, or maybe some bigger ones that you think are kind of best practice examples that people should check out this year and follow?
So the one that I was thinking about that I think it does an incredible job is Lululemon. So one of the reasons is I recently bought a pair of clothes from them, and one of the thing about a pair of their joggers, and we were talking about this before the call. Like it's a number of filters and the way that they can like help you find the product that you're looking for is incredible. I think that's something that especially apparel companies can forget is a really important part of the buying process, right? Especially anything where you're trying to find a specific size. I'm pretty tall, so almost everywhere, whenever I'm trying to buy anything online, I have one thing in mind, which is if it's pants or a shirt, like is it going to be long enough to fit me? And often I think a lot of people when they're shopping, it doesn't like they have one thing in mind. It's like, I like this, but can I find it in the size that fits me? And I think that's one thing that is can be overlooked by apparel companies because it's not that sexy and it's also challenging to do. So my challenge, or the people that I think are doing a really interesting job, any companies that are doing like your fit. So Lululemon also allows you to put your fit in there. Bonobos does an incredible job as well. You can put your measurements in there and then search by products that fit you. I think that's really interesting and something that we're going to come to expect entirely from apparel companies. Someone's going to make, $100 million company helping people do this product, create like people's fit for Shopify stores.
I can't remember the name of it right now, but there is a brand or a company that like collectively has different apparel brands that they work with, and they take kind of the reviews and fits of all the different brands that they work with, and then those brands use that data to spit out the right size for you. So you can go in, if you're shopping on, I'm going to use Viore as an example because we were just talking about that, and what size you are in Lululemon, you could put that in and see what size you are in Viore to kind of
Super
compare.
Smart.
So I can't remember the name of that company right now, but
that also, I feel like that's a big opportunity just from the idea, like there's Shop Pay and you can just pay and keep your credit card saved. Mm-hmm. Like, why can't you keep dangerous. Your fit saved with that?
It's very dangerous. But exactly. That's brilliant. You should write that into Shopify because there's so much data on there that would be super valuable to be able to just go in and see your fit.
It's like, oh, you're typically this, but in this company you run or this, it just would save so much money in returns. And so anyway, somebody want to build that out there?
Yeah. Write to us if you do. Yeah, I mean, Lulu is a best in class example, I think, across the board. I think they do a lot of engagement with their customers, and some of the stuff that I've been talking to, I know they do events here in Charleston with local yoga teachers, and they're really involved in the communities that they're into. And I think, definitely a website that's worth going to if you're looking for some inspiration for your website, and a model to look at. Do you have any other ones or?
That was the one that I prepared for. So
I've got one I can share.
Yeah. What do you got?
So anyone who knows me will laugh if they listen to this and hear me say this, but there's a brand called A Day, which is actually also an apparel company. They're women's apparel out of New York.
How do you spell it?
ADAY. This is
aday.com.
Yep. Is the website. Yeah.
Yep.
And their capsule wardrobe, they're very focused in environmentalism and ethical, sustainable clothing. And I think the founders might have spun off from Everlane, but don't quote me on that. But I just find everything that they do is just super premium. They don't have a huge product line, but they do a really good job of like getting you excited. I'm on their SMS list and I haven't unsubscribed yet because what they're putting out is interesting, and I'm clicking through because I am curious when they are releasing new things and the content that they're putting out there.
Yep.
They do a great job with their email marketing and their website's just really clean and beautiful. I always look at them as a best in class example because they're also they're staying on top of things and making updates and evolving. And then I love the sustainable part of that as well. I think they do a great job really speaking to their audience with that.
That's good. There's another company I'll share that's interesting that I just found. It's called Reigning Champ. So some people who worked at Supreme spun off and created. So Supreme, obviously their products, their sweatshirts are like insanely expensive because of all the branding. So they just said, we're going to take just the same quality of the Supreme sweatshirt, which is really, really, really high, and we're going to make a basics company and put it out there. Smart. I thought that was a really interesting, their website's not like super cool or anything like that, but I think that's really interesting to see a focus on the highest quality. I think there's always a place for the highest quality of something, and I think that's a continued opportunity this year is figure out a niche, something that people want. People want sweatshirts, and then just go and create the highest quality basic. People will always pay for the highest quality, especially if they just want to buy one that lasts for 5 years, right?
Yep.
And I don't know. I think that's an opportunity, especially around. I think there might be maybe it's my own bias, but a pushback against fast fashion and towards really high quality products that that last for a really long time.
Yeah, I think the consumer is getting more and more educated. That's a way that I shop as well now. And I think, what you're saying, if they do it really well, even if that shirt lasts for 5 years, your retentions might not be great on that customer, but chances are they're going to buy them for everyone else that they know too, if they love it that much and you do that good of a job. So yeah.
Yep.
Cool. Well, shifting directions a little bit, want to talk kind of about where you're pulling inspiration from, and what are you listening to right now? What are some of your, outside of our e-commerce influence podcast, what do you recommend people go to listen to get inspired, either for business or for life? Just anything that's inspiring you right now.
Good question. I was looking through my podcast list of what I actually listen to. Podcasts I probably listen to the most right now is the All In podcast. Really good podcast. It's hosted by Jason Calacanis, David Sachs, David Friedman, and Chamath Palihapitiya. Jason's the host, and I think like 2 of the 4 of them are billionaires, maybe 3 out of 4. And they talk a lot about behind the scenes, Silicon Valley, tech, politics. Super good podcast, comes out every Friday. And that's interesting to kind of keep up to date on the business world. And that's a good one. Listen to Bankless, which is very interesting. Bankless is a podcast about cryptocurrency, but it's about kind of this like changing evolution of fiat currency to cryptocurrency and how to do that in a very like private, decentralized way. And it's interesting. They bring a lot of really interesting guests. It takes a little while to get up to speed, but if you're interested in cryptocurrency, that's a good one. Peter Attia Drive. It's a podcast, it's a health podcast. It's had some interesting episodes about COVID recently. I highly recommend. And sometimes I listen to the Dark Horse podcast as well, but it's just kind of more of a episode here, episode there, not a consistent one. The ones that are consistent are like probably the All In podcast, and then kind of finding ones people send me.
Yeah. In line with that, what are you reading? What's your book list, I guess? What do you have coming up this year that you're excited about, or what have you read recently?
I have a rule that if somebody tells me a book twice or 3 times, I will buy it instantly and I'll try to read it. I'll buy the sample at least and then start from there. I wrote some books that I liked for this last year. Double Your Profits by Bob Pfeiffer is a good book. Tactical, kind of like if you are struggling and you need to drive more profit in your business, it's a good book for it. Very tactical, really good. Highly recommend it. The Big Leap is another interesting book that I read this last year. It's about upper limit problems and how everybody on their progression through life, when you start achieving any level of success in your life, if it passes or surpasses something that you're comfortable with, something will happen called you'll hit an upper limit problem, and you'll create issues in your life that are sometimes very confusing because you've passed your threshold, your like pleasure threshold, and you will punish yourself in some other way. And that could be worrying, it could be sabotage, it could be lots of different things. It's a very interesting book, and I highly recommend that one. Completely random, but great book. Black Flags, The Rise of ISIS was one of my favorite books of the last year. I'm super nerd out about the Middle East, and like it's fascinating to me to see like what's happening in the Middle East. We've gone through a war and all the like political maneuvering that has led to instability over there. It won a Pulitzer Prize. It's an excellent book, and it talks about post Al-Qaeda, or the second iteration of Al-Qaeda post Osama bin Laden. And it's a great book. And the last one I'll recommend is a book you've read, Wizard of Ads.
Yeah.
Which I feel like I want to reread.
I actually was thinking about that book today.
Yeah, it's super good. It's like filled with principles about advertising, and highly recommend that one.
Yeah, it's short too. It's easy to read each chapter and kind of get a little nugget to walk away from. So that's a good one.
What about you? What do you got? Any podcasts or books?
Yeah, I'm going to go in a totally different direction than you, just to give some people different options. My favorite podcast of probably all time is Invisibilia. It just always is great. They changed the host 2 seasons ago. They're a season podcast, but I've been listening to the most recent season, which came out at the end of last year, and it's just about different types of relationships and friends, but not just friends. And it's really good, just about life. And there's, I think, just a lot to think about in every episode, really.
Cool.
So that's a good one if you're just looking for something kind of a little bit lighter but enjoyable. And then book recommendations. So Austin knows this. I'm a big fiction reader. So I will say a book that I read, I'm similar where I don't make a list. I kind of just let books come to me as I find them. But a book that I read last year that really I'd heard about it a lot and everybody told me to read it and I kept not reading it. But it had a huge impact on me is The Alchemist,
Oh, it's a great book.
which is a really short read, but it's one, like you might have read it in school, but it is worth going back to as an adult, I feel like. I actually read that like right before I started working here. And so it just kind of gives you some inspiration to make your own path and build a vision for yourself. So it's a good
I
one.
also reread that book last year.
Yeah, it's funny.
Great
Yeah.
book. It was like in November, I think, or October. It's such a short book.
It's easy,
that,
yeah.
You can easily pick it up and go through it, and it will leave you on the other side feeling inspired.
Yeah. I think that's both my podcast and that book recommendation are both ones to kind of just, without having to read a heavy business book or listen to a heavy business podcast, just make you think about who you are and what you want. And I think that's going to make life and business better for you. So
They're completely connected.
yeah, yes, they should be. I think that's what we teach, and that's what we encourage people to do is you can live your best life and have the business of your dreams. So yeah. All right. So to round it out, if you had to put money on it, what would be your number one prediction for something that's going to happen and come true this year?
Oh, I mean, it's interesting. I had a bunch of predictions earlier. My number one prediction that I'll have to put money on this year is, so one of my bigger theses is I think that we're going to go through some sort of financial pain this year, through a financial crash, or we're kind of seeing a little bit. We're recording this in January and seeing the beginning of this, but I actually don't think that we're going to have a big bottom out crash this year. I could be totally wrong, but my feeling is that we're going to somehow recover this year and get through. And we'll be surprised at the rabbits that the Fed pulls out of its hat, and we'll figure out some way to get through this year without a bone rattling financial crash. And I do think that'll happen at some point in the future, but I think it'll be longer than this year. That's my take on it.
Relatively positive viewpoint on it, I think, for something negative. Okay, we'll have to do a follow-up at the end of the year and go back and see what's happened here.
I could be completely wrong there. That's one of those things that I feel like the inevitability of it, because there's lots of discussions around it, leads me to think, maybe it's not going to happen this year.
Mm-hmm. We shall see. The good news is you didn't actually put any money on it, so. Uh-oh.
Well, I think investing, right? If you're invested in anything, you do have
there is money in it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. My prediction for this year is that the excitement and we've already started to see this, but I think the excitement and buzz around the metaverse coming to be is going to die out quickly. I think that by the end of the year, we're barely going to be kind of talking about that, and not to say that environment isn't going to come to be at some point. And I think in some ways, like some of that already is what we are experiencing and living in. But I just think this vision and that Mark Zuckerberg has put out there is just, it's not going to really take off or be something that people care about. And I think it was just kind of a nice little buzz moment. And it was interesting to have conversations with my parents over Christmas about what exactly it is. But I predict that by Christmas of next year, my dad will not be asking me about the metaverse or be interested in that anymore.
Yeah.
So.
I think that's interesting. I I'm not. I wouldn't be surprised that happens. I think there'll be some. I think one thing that might be interesting, and we'll see how it plays out. Is another prediction here that I have is that a lot of our. I think there's a possibility that the end of COVID. What I mean by that is like, it's not going to be like like an instant stop, right? Like it's ended in some places, in other places it's still the restrictions are still quite strong. But I think it could be interesting that there might be a coming together of people towards the end related to wanting to end it. And that's a kind of a prediction that maybe there'll be some de-escalation of polarization based on people wanting life to get back to normal. We will see. That's a prediction that I have. I'm not.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could. I don't know if I put money on it just because I've been wrong again multiple times around this. But that's something I feel like people might be towards the end realize like, all right, we want to get done with this and get back to normal life.
Mm-hmm. I hope that we can get there soon. Cool. Well, this has been a fun conversation. Is there anything else that you want to share? Any wisdom or things that you want to put out there before we shut down?
No, let us know on Twitter what you think. It's at @A_Braun, and yours is?
I'm at Lily Ackerley. So yeah, share your predictions.
I guess tell us we're wrong. Tell us we're right. Retweet us. And yeah, love to hear from you.
All right. Thanks, guys.